Dear students, welcome to the MOOC on India's foreign policy in a globalizing world. In this lesson, we are going to learn about the relations between India and Russia in the globalized world. Main objectives of this lesson are to understand India-Russia bilateral relations in the globalized world, to learn about the economic policy shift of Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union and its ties with India, to know about the improvement of bilateral relations in various dimensions between India and Russia. We begin with the first part of the lesson, in which we will discuss about how capitalism and globalization had an impact on India-Russia relations. India and the USSR had cordial relations during the Soviet era. The groundbreaking change in international relations during the post-Cold War phase had a significant impact on the Indo-Russian relations. The disintegration of USSR compelled the Russian administration under Boris Yeltsin to adopt a pro-Western foreign policy. Meanwhile, India introduced a new economic policy in which it began liberalizing its economy and looked forward to the West for trade and investment. The survival methods adopted by both the countries paved way for the new Indo-Russian ties. Capitalism and globalization. If Cold War is considered to be between socialism and capitalism, then the latter emerged as the winner, at least for a while. Capitalism has evolved over the past 4 centuries and demonstrated how much it can adapt with the fast changing world or how much it can change the world. Opponents of capitalism such as China are also following a variant of the capitalist model under the pretext of market socialism. Even the third world countries like Angola, Ethiopia and Vietnam were forced to adopt the capitalist models due to the failure of socialist models. Although it is not possible to find a concrete definition of capitalism, the major characteristics would be privatization of the means of production, wage labor to maximize profit, inbuilt mechanism to accumulate and reproduce capital. Capitalism is closely associated with the process of globalization due to the former's tendency to expand worldwide. The process of globalization has facilitated the integration of markets, economies and cultures worldwide. Internationalism is a major step towards globalization. The spread of globalization and most importantly the benefits of globalization are going to spread unevenly across different parts of the world. In other words, an association of capitalism and globalization could perpetuate unequal and uneven development. Due to the uneven gains, it is unrealistic to expect a uniform response to the process of globalization. Even though one might argue that globalization would bring multilateral cooperation, the multilateral and multi-layered dimensions of conflicts that might come with it should not be overlooked. Globalization can create new power rivalries and expose tensions within and between nations. Globalization is also a breeding ground for homogenization from the stronger states to the weaker ones. Globalization paves way for new power rivalries. The evolving significance of transnational regimes like the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund exposes that proposition. Similarly, issues of global significance like human rights or environment preservation also gain global growth and exposure. There are strong reasons why one could believe that capitalism and globalization are the way forward to the formation of an international civil society which will be concerned about the issues of global warming, human rights, gender equality, etc. India and Russia are countries which were compelled to embrace capitalism and globalization as the way forward since the socialist experiments did not succeed. Apart from developing their own brands of capitalism, both India and Russia are also engaged in devising indigenous modes of interaction with the transnational regimes. For example, they try to reassert their positions in forums like the United Nations through mutual cooperation, even though they seek financial assistance from the international donor agencies like the IMF, which is a proponent of the capitalist world. Both countries try to exert their dominance in the regional spheres and at the same time have to deal with their internal troubles. India and Russia made efforts to revive their relationship even when they were preoccupied with domestic priorities. A treaty of friendship and cooperation was signed in 1993, followed with a military technical cooperation agreement in 1994. India and China were the major markets of Russian defense industry, as that contributed to almost half of the total revenue generated through arms sales. This was crucial for the Russian defense industry, as it saw a major decline in military requirements after the collapse of the Soviet Union. The countries evolved from sharing a buyer-seller relationship to joint research, development and production of military platforms. A successful example of such indigenous production would be the mighty BrahMos missile. However, the economic relations remained stagnant. Though there were talks and visits regarding the removal of bottlenecks of the bilateral trade, by 1996, Russia's trade with India was merely 1% of its overall trade. The cultural exchange and scholarships that had flourished during the Soviet era also suffered as the funding was reduced. There was a significant decline both in the number of institutions in India teaching Russian language and in the number of students enrolled. In the initial presidency days of Vladimir Putin in 2000, renewed efforts were made to strengthen the bilateral relationships by instituting annual summits between the countries. The declaration on the Indo-Russian strategic partnership was signed in October 2000 to enhance the level of cooperation in almost all areas of bilateral relations. In December 2010, the status of Indo-Russian relations elevated to the level of a special and privileged strategic partnership. During the year 2014, Russia had to deal with the Ukraine crisis and the annexation of Crimea, which resulted in a growing dependency on China both strategically and economically, since the ties with the West deteriorated. India, led by the BJP government, had to build closer ties with the US, since it was strategically important for India to maintain the balance of power. During 2014 to 2018, there was a steady rise in defense and economic ties with the US, while strengthening relationship with India's immediate neighborhood, including Japan and West Asia. I hope you understood about how capitalism and globalization had an impact on India-Russia relations. We will discuss about India and Russia's political, economic, defense and cultural relations in the next video. Thank you.